Wisdom Wednesday Tahiti edition. I am Anel Lee, bringing you raw and authentic wisdom. Do you see my background? This is all real, no filter. I am super grateful, and I, of course, had to do my recording today because this Wisdom Wednesday that I started is very special to me. For those of you who have been following my journey, I am Anel Lee, your host for Wisdom Wednesday. And if you know my story, or if you don't know my story, I have definitely come a long way. I remember about 8 years ago when my family had a traumatic event happen. It was one of the worst times of my life. And one of the ways that I was able to bounce back was establishing boundaries. I realized that my last marriage of 10 years, I did not have boundaries. And as I started my healing journey, I realized the importance of boundaries. One of the biggest reasons why domestic violence survivors are not able to leave, which I am a domestic violence survivor myself, is because they cannot imagine life outside of their current situation. So in that moment, in the life that I was living, I thought, nobody's gonna love me, nobody's gonna want me. How could I do it? I had a lot of limiting beliefs that helped keep me in that negative, toxic cycle. So today I'm going to be sharing the 4 steps to creating your boundaries, to establishing your boundaries. Okay? Number 1, you have to identify your values. Because without identifying your values, it's kind of hard to know where you're going. When a pilot is going to your destination that you're flying to, they have a flight plan, correct? And oftentimes we do life without having a plan. That is why having a plan is so essential in getting your boundaries established. You have to identify your boundaries, and then you have to identify your values. You have to identify what is important to you. Is love important to me? Is commitment important to me? Is loyalty important to me? Is honesty important to me? Is work ethic important to me? There's a lot of values that we can identify. Once we identify those boundaries, then we identify why is that value important to me. For example, for me, loyalty is so important to me because I cannot have someone in my circle if they're not loyal. The definition of loyalty is giving or showing firm and constant support or allegiance to a person or institution. Most people are loyal to their jobs. The jobs ain't loyal to you, but that's another topic. We're not going to get into that. But loyalty for me personally, is important. And why loyalty is important to me is because if you don't show that constant support, I can't trust you. So for me, that is why loyalty is important. So number 1, you have to get clear on your values. Number 2, you have to understand why they are important to you. Then third, you have to then define your boundaries. You have to identify your boundaries. You have to say, okay, in my life, loyalty is important to me because I need someone who's constant in my life, right? So if you're not loyal, you can't be in my close circle. I'll talk to you and I'll treat you good, but you won't be in my inner circle. So I identified that loyalty was my value. I identified why it's important to me. Why is loyalty so important to me? And then third, I identified loyalty is my value. Therefore, I have to set a boundary around that, right? So that's 1, 2, 3. Now, I have to implement my boundary, right? What does that mean? It means I have to communicate my boundary. It means when I have friends or people that are close to me, I communicate to them that loyalty is important to me. For example, if you are talking behind my back, you're not being loyal, right? If you are gossiping behind my back and you are my friend in my inner circle, you should be speaking the same way you speak whether I'm there or I'm not. So let's say a friend was speaking bad about me. So how do I implement that boundary? Sometimes you could set it up before it even gets to there, or you could just wait until that boundary is violated. Then it would sound like, hey friend, obviously I want to fact check it. So I would say, hey friend, I was told, I heard that such and such was mentioned about me. Is that true or not? If they say yes or no, it could determine where the conversation is going to go. Or how you would address it is, when you speak behind my back, that makes me feel upset, let down, angry, and I would like for you to not talk about me behind my back, right? I've given you the 3 steps on how to communicate effectively when you're establishing your boundaries. You've established the boundary, and then implementing is when you're communicating that, when you're saying, hey friend, when you talk about me behind my back, I feel upset, I feel hurt, I feel let down, and I would like for you to not talk about me when I'm not there, or in a negative way when I'm not there. Now, enforcing the boundary is when you have already identified your boundary, you've implemented your boundary, now you're enforcing the boundary. But if they violate that boundary again, you have to enforce the boundary. So that would sound something like, hey friend, we spoke such and such time, and I mentioned that I felt upset, let down, angry when you spoke about me behind my back, and I asked you to stop talking about me behind my back. If you do it again, you have to decide what is the consequence that you are really going to abide by. Don't say I'm going to stop talking to you and then don't stop talking to them. So you have to really take your time when you're establishing your boundaries and then implementing and enforcing your boundaries, because you don't want to be drastic. You don't want to go all or nothing. You don't want to have black or white, right? You want to have the middle path. It's the wise mind area, because if you're too much in black or too much in white, that's really extreme. That's really rigid. You don't want to be on very opposite spectrums. You want to be kind of the middle path. You want to use your wise mind. You don't want to be an emotion mind, all in emotion mind, or all in logic mind. And we could talk about that, differentiating that in another video. But for now, I really wanted to share with you all how you really are able to establish your boundaries, because boundaries is so important to setting up the life that you want, to set up the life, a fulfilled life. I absolutely love my life now. I love the people that are in my life, and I am so intentional with who I allow into my inner circle, because my peace is worthless. So if you are going to be in my circle, you will, I promise you, know what my boundaries are if you don't honor them. I hope you found this helpful. If you found this video helpful, please share it. Also, please subscribe to my channel if you found it helpful. And you could turn on your notification settings to get notified whenever I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.